Rasslin, Dave Brown, right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Solie, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey, guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Regional Rasslin Podcast, where we talk the territories. I am your host, as always, Ray Russell, and this week we dive back into Memphis, 1985, with guest co-host, the one and only Mr. Gene Jackson. Gene, welcome back to the program.
Ray, how's it going, man? I'm ready to get back to some good old Memphis 1985. It feels like it's been longer than it probably has.
Too long indeed. It's good to be back in Mempho 1985, and it's always great to do it with you, Gene, of course, the king of Memphis podcasting at this point in time, between the Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert. Congratulations on that. And of course, the Retro Wrestling Review Show, along with some of your buddies, covering 1993 USWA right now.
Yeah, I got an email from a guy the other day, and it was prefaced with, "So I understand you're the Memphis guy," and I was like, "Oh, I'm becoming the Memphis guy. There's worse things to be. I can handle that."
Did you say, "Yes, Randy, I'm the Memphis guy"?
Oh no, he wouldn't start it that way. He'd be like, "Oh, so I hear you're trying to be the Memphis guy."
Oh, okay. And that's sure. Randy Hales for those curious. Yeah, exactly. So,
and to be clear, I have no problem with Randy. He has graciously invited me to be a part of the Memphis Hall of Fame this year, so I'm pretty excited to go be a part of that and see some people that I'm really a big fan of inducted: the Dirty White Boy and Nightmare Danny Davis and PG-13, the Rock and Roll Express. It should be a really fun time.
Sounds fun. Randy, where's my ticket? All right, guys, we are back here on Regional Rasslin. This is Memphis 85. You should know that by now. And, of course, Ray Russell, Gene Jackson here, all right along ringside, I guess you could say. But before we get going back into the month of March in 1985, Gene, the one and only Steve Crawford sent in a couple more ditties for us here, and he's actually sent it several weeks ago, so I have to apologize to Steve right out of the gate here. I just keep forgetting, and I had to put it in my notes this time, so I didn't forget on a couple of things, because a little late, yes, I do apologize, but they were sent to me, and so I felt we need to do our due diligence. If somebody's going to take their time and do their homework to help us here, I'm always going to acknowledge it here on the program.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Steve is our answer man when it comes to Memphis. So I'm always, whenever you tell me we got an update from Steve Crawford, I'm always excited to see what dirt he's dug up for us.
From the pages of the Memphis Wrestling Magazine, here's update. Thanks to Steve Crawford here for these couple of bits. A few weeks ago, we talked about a guy coming in by the name of Jet Star, and we never actually saw him on TV. I'm not even sure if he actually worked any of the house shows either. But according to a Slam Wrestling article that was sent to me from Steve, Jet Star was a guy by the name of Doug Ramsey out of Ontario, Canada. He would have been around 28 years of age around the time here in 1985. Mostly a mechanic most of his life, but early on he did participate in karate and martial arts. Suffered a knee injury during that, so he picked up pro wrestling, was actually trained by Phil Watson, the son of former NWA World Champion Whipper Billy Watson. So, as you might imagine, as a Canadian, Mr. Ramsey, or Jet Star, went on to work for George Cannon in Ontario, Frank Valois in Montreal. He worked in the Maritimes, and most specifically, he enjoyed working with the Bearman, apparently, Dave McKigney, before his passing in the late 80s. According to Jet Star, now, this is where you start interviewing the guy and he starts telling you his version of how things went. But if you listen to what he has to say, he was the guy that kind of gave Sabu that first rub in Sabu's career. Nobody was really booking Sabu, the nephew of the Sheik. Couldn't get work, but thanks to Jet Star working a few matches and making Sabu look good, hey, that's what we have to thank him for, I guess, Sabu, ECW, FMW, and all that great stuff.
Well, thanks, Jet. That's mighty nice of you. Having the Sheik as your uncle, I guess, wasn't good enough. We had to have Jet Star get involved, the great Mr. Ramsey, the auto body man from.
Yeah. No, he doesn't make it here in Memphis. By all accounts, he even stated that he tried to get into Florida and they wouldn't accept him. So that's where we're at. And basically, from what I gather, based on that article, anybody can go check it out. like I said, it's over there at Slam Wrestling. They said most of his career he was, an underneath guy, an enhancement worker, but he also did some heel work as well. So it would have been interesting to see what he would have looked like here in 1985, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be. Now, how he got booked here, that wasn't explained. That would have been very interesting. A question I would have loved to have had for Mr. Ramsey, but it is what it is. And speaking of talents here, we did see this guy. He was here from the beginning of the year, and that's Chief Joe Lightfoot. Remember many episodes ago, Gene, I hypothesized that maybe he got a run here in Memphis thanks to the Poffo family, because Chief Joe from Canada, and of course the Poffos worked a lot in Eastern Canada, and I thought, well, Randy and Lanny are here, Angelo's walking around, so maybe they put in a word like, hey, give this guy a shot. It can't hurt. And according to Steve, though, he was doing some digging, and it looks like Lightfoot finished up working for Eddie Graham at the tail end of October 1984. And that was right around when Dutch Mantell came in to take over the book there. And so now that Dutch is here in Memphis, I find it ironic that Chief Joe's gone as Dutch arrives once again. I don't know that there's really any issue there, but Steve just figured that new booker, new talent, and so maybe Eddie sent word to Jerry Jarrett, hey, give this guy some work, give this guy a shot. And maybe that's how Lightfoot wound up in Memphis.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah, when else are you going to see a guy? Well, that's why he stuck out like a sore thumb. It didn't make sense. Somebody had to have done something to get that guy into the territory. And finally, when things started to work for him, when they turned him babyface, he disappeared.
Yeah, they finally get him, out of the square peg in the round hole that they were trying to force the entire time he was there. They get him in the spot he needs to be in, and then he disappears because, Memphis.
Well, new booker too, Tom Ernesto here for those who haven't been keeping score here, but we do have a new booker in Tom Ernesto. We're going to see a lot of new talent. We already see Sweet Daddy Siki on his way to the territory this week. We're going to be discussing him and a whole lot more, so stay tuned for that. But before we get there, Gene, we're going to do what we always do at the top of every episode. We're going to recap last week in the Memphis territory.
All right.
I love it. The Dirty Dutchman made his way back to Memphis. Always good to see Dutch Mantell back in the CWA.
Yeah, well, like I said in the last episode, I'm always excited to see Dutch. And, no matter how long he's there, for the time that he's going to be there, he's going to be entertaining, and he's going to be in something interesting. Yeah, and if he's not interesting, he'll make it interesting.
Yeah, indeed. And always promising a quality match on the show, even if they don't have anything special for him. Dutch going to make it count, as we'll see here moving forward. But also headed back in are the PYTs, Pretty Young Things, along with their stamp of approval from Mr. Gordon Soley. We saw that interview. Gordon sending the PYTs, brother, get him out of here. PYTs back in Memphis, Tennessee.
I still just, every time I see poor Norvell Austin, I just marvel at the name PYT. But I guess it's one of those ironic heel things. Since they're heels, it works, but my goodness.
Hey, we discussed this last time. Coco Ware is the Pretty Young, and Norvell Austin clearly is the Thang in this tag team.
That's right. I forgot that you solved the mystery of that. We didn't need Steve Crawford for that one. You got that one figured out.
Oh, the visuals, people, Norvell walking around with a boombox standing next to Gordon Soley. That's just, it writes itself. But maybe we'll see that here in Memphis next to Lance Russell. Somehow I could see Lance just jam. I love that Michael Jackson boy. Love him.
I ride around listening to Beat It all day long.
I love that tune. Oh, man. It appears with the Macho Man's heel turn recently, along with that comes a side dish of Lanny Poffo. Sir Laniel, now also a heel.
Heel by default. It's like wrong dressing room, Lanny. Randy turned. And it's like his version of Mike Sharp. Oh, okay.
Well, I can do this trick anywhere.
It doesn't really matter. I'm not over either way.
Well, the Fabulous Ones stated last week that they're on garbage detail, gunning for Tuxedo Newman, who apparently came to Memphis specifically for the Fabs. Just ask Sweet Stan.
Well, what's the most subtle way to sneak up on the Fabs and take them out is to convince everyone else that they're there for Jerry Lawler when secretly they're there for the Fabs, but the Fabs will never see it coming if he just always talks about Jerry Lawler. It's pretty smart, actually.
We know why you're really here, Tuxedo Newman. So the Fabs not going to be out tricked here. But speaking of Tux, he ordered a beatdown last week, oh, this was good, on Jerry Lawler in the studio, encouraging the Macho Man, and I quote, pluck his eye out. of the King. I mean, really, Gene, if you're going to do something like that, you don't announce it. You just do it. Just ask Haku and Jesse Barr.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'd have much rather heard Tux. I love that Stan Lane implies that his full given name is Tuxedo Newman, like somebody's dad calling him by their full name. But if he'd have told us that he had King Tonga on the way to Memphis, we might have believed there was going to be some eyeballs getting plucked out. But when you tell us your stable consists of the PYTs and Sweet Daddy Siki, even with Randy Savage on the case, I just don't believe that anybody's getting their eye plucked out. But it was worth a shot.
They tried for 10 minutes. There were at least 4 of them, and they still couldn't get the job done. Oh, man. Hey, what do you know? The Wild Hogs got gear last week. I almost didn't recognize them out there. Looked like a couple of bloated blonde bombers.
Yeah, it looked like, the blonde bombers had been dredged up out of a lake somewhere after a good year. But hey, it's a better look for them. I wasn't, as we covered well on the show, I was not digging the Wild Hogs in their hillbilly overall. So it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, hillbilly moondogs no more. The Wild Hogs now wearing wrestling tights. How about that? Also, Speedy Tall Tree, the son of Booker Tom Ernesto, for those wondering how he got here. Speedy Tall Tree. What a name. Where did that come from? He made his Memphis debut, and even his Booker daddy knew not to put him over on the exotic Adrian Street.
Well, at least he learned something from Goulas anyway. Okay, you can put him in the ring, but let's not make that mistake. We're not gonna push him or put any belts on him.
We had a very eventful Mid-South Coliseum show last Sunday, guys. Jerry Oskey made his Memphis debut, plus Miss Linda battled Sweater Puppy's Debbie Combs in a weird post-show, lights out, free for all of the public to watch type encounter. Very weird.
Yeah, that was in the history of any territory. Can you think of any time in any territory where they went on TV and said, we're going to have the night's card, and at the end, we're going to have 2 people, be it 2 men, 2 women, 2 bears, whatever, fight in the ring, and we're going to open up the doors to the public, and anybody that wants to come in and witness this can just come on in and see it. I've never heard of such. It was an interesting move.
I have never heard that, and you have to wonder if business was booming, which it was not here. Imagine that. But if business was booming, would they have ever attempted such a thing? You hear tell of, these giant cards for Crockett, and even in Memphis, turning away fans. They getting on the radio and tell the fans, turn around, stop coming to the arena. It's sold out. It's packed. You're causing a traffic jam. Could you imagine if they were booming like that, trying to something like this? They clearly were going to try to do anything they could. I really don't know how this worked out. I mean, there's actually a little footage we're going to get into here. I don't see any extra fans out here for it, but it's very unique tactic for sure to end the show.
I was curious. Yeah, I would love to hear from anybody who happens to be listening to this that might have been around at the time, if there was anyone that hung out outside the Mid-South Coliseum until the rest of the matches were over and then was ushered in just for this encounter between Miss Linda and Debbie Combs. If it was 10 people, I would be shocked.
Well, but most importantly, they're part of that Mid-South Coliseum card. We have a brand new Southern Heavyweight Champion as the Macho Man Randy Savage defeated Jerry the King Lawler for the title.
Well, I'm as big a fan of the King as anybody, but I am beyond excited to witness the reign of Macho Man here in Memphis as the Southern Heavyweight Champion. This promises to be fun.
Tower of power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey, sky's the limit, space is the place, too hot to handle, too cold to hold, dig it!
I like it. Madness. And we're going to see some madness.
It's madness
here.
Out of the gate when the first thing he decides to do is it appears he's strapped his belt around a symbol or a freaking some kind of platter of some sort.
I've got a little more information as to what exactly that is when we get there in this episode. What Gene's referring to, guys, if you haven't watched that episode yet, I encourage you to go over to youtube.com/wrestlinggrenade. Pull up this episode as we get rolling right now, guys. We go back in time, the March 23rd edition of the CWA's Championship Wrestling. All right, guys, Saturday morning, March the 23rd, it's Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside, Davey. As we get going, right away, we welcome out the brand new Southern Heavyweight Champion, Randy Macho Man Savage, and his manager, Tux Newman, out there as well. Tux going to talk that Hollywood party they threw. I wrote, yawn. As Savage shows off that newly won title, as you said, I wrote initially, wrapped around a shiny gold plate. Now, it was brought to my attention later by Mr. Stan Lane. What Savage has there is one of those little things that you would put by your fireplace where you keep your logs in. It just has the handles removed. And I literally had someone who I know did not watch that episode, but saw the pictures that I posted, ask me if that's what that was. And I said, apparently so, because now Stan Lane and you have mentioned that. So, yeah, it's just one of the little firewood holders. And Savage, only the macho. It looked awesome. I don't care. You got to give them Savage throughout his career, at least in the 80s, A for effort when it comes to props. Whether he was pulling out little creamers, talking about being the cream of the crop and all this other good stuff in the WWF. Yeah. He said he was going to sweep Hulk Hogan one time, pulled out a broom. I mean, here we are. He's got his gold wrapped around gold.
Only the Macho Man could come up with that.
And make it look cool, right? If anybody else did this, I could see, Uncle Elmer did this, I would have a different take.
True, that's very true. But well, I'm glad I missed that in the promo from the Fab. So I'm glad you caught that, because that's definitely a fun little detail.
Yeah. So Lance Russell here going to tease showing footage of the matchup and just how Savage actually won that title. But Tux Newman, he wants none of that, even claiming that he's going to buy, and I had to laugh out loud at this, the ludicrousy of Tux Newman, he's going to purchase TV5 studios to prevent the VTR from airing. I wrote, well, if he had that kind of money, why is he managing the Cyclops?
Yeah, I guess. The absurdity of a lot of, we talked about this last time about some of the things he said on the Jerry Lawler show. The absurdity of some of the things that Tux Newman says just makes it really hard for him to get heat, because it's just like, you can't even get mad at it. You just roll your eyes and like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, come on.
So apparently for this segment of the program, we run a little short on time, so the VTR will have to wait as we take our first commercial break. And here in my notes, I'm going to ask you now, Gene. I wrote, at this stage, do you think anyone is buying this Hollywood shtick? Because, for me, it's one step above Bob Hollywood Holly going on a date with Julia Roberts in Smoky Mountain.
Yes, it's of that same ilk of you're just like, no, this guy's probably never, and which ironically, that part was true, but you would think this guy's never been to Hollywood. He's probably never been outside the Memphis city limits, much less, he's going to buy the TV studio, and it's a lot of it's eye rolling. And again, I'm trying to keep an open mind. I know a lot of people really, really think a lot of this guy, and, I'm not trying to knock him, but he's not off to a rousing start for me anyway.
No, like I said, 20 years ago, whenever I first got, maybe 25 years ago, whenever I got my hands on a lot of this stuff initially, I remember, enjoying it. Maybe because it was just something different in Memphis right at the time, or maybe it was because it was a new character for me to watch at the time. But going back and watching this in succession week after week right now, it's not really doing it for me. Let's be real. The stuff that he's saying between the Hollywood parties and the Andy Kaufman brain cancer things, it's either rehashed stuff or it's just, I don't know, it's not really working for me. I'm just not buying into it. And I'm not knocking him for everything he did in Los Angeles for the business, whether it was the announcing, the interviewing, or working behind the scenes. I enjoy Jeff Walton, the man, but Tux Newman, the character, not so much for me. And I don't know if he'd be a step better if he could just move away from this Hollywood gimmick, but I feel like he came in and he's like, all right, guys, what's my angle? What am I doing? Well, where are you from? LA? Hollywood, here we go. And it just, it rolled downhill from there. I don't know how it all came about, if it was his idea, Jarrett's idea, whatever the case may be, but it's just not working for me.
Yeah, because just the whole premise of it is like, why would a guy from Hollywood choose to come to Memphis to a wrestling show to other than to seek revenge for Andy Kaufman's murder by via pile driver through cancer? And this, when you say that out loud, then you're just like, never mind. That's right. Just as bad as any of it. And maybe it's just a cynical 47-year-old me that's seen too much in the meantime. Maybe if you could somehow take me back to 1985 and take away everything I've seen in the meantime, I'd be a little less cynical and be, like, this ain't too bad. But right now, I'm not digging it. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe he'll find his footing. Maybe this will get better.
Yeah, I'm not even sensing the heat from the fans. The response is there. They're making noise, but it just doesn't come off as that heel heat kind of noise.
No, I can't see that at any point we're going to have somebody coming out of the crowd to jump on this guy and want to get him like they did Jimmy Hart.
Well, with a new booker comes a lot of new faces. Tux Newman was definitely one of them, but the newest face going to make his debut right here, right now on TV is Jerry Oski, a.k.a. Jerry Allen in the WWF. He's going to be taking on Big Bill Rose. Oski making that Memphis debut. They were talking about him coming in a week or two ago, but he's finally arrived. Bill Rose, you guys might remember him as the guy who took that backwards bump on his head to the floor when that top rope broke several weeks ago here on Memphis TV. And to quote Bill on Facebook, that shit hurt.
Well, it certainly looked like it did, so I think he captured it perfectly.
Oski, even back here in Memphis, in great shape, tremendous shape, billed from Hartford, Connecticut, of all places. So you'd think he's destined for a run in the WWF, which he is. He'll be there, like I mentioned, as Jerry Allen. Now, he won't get much past the prelims, but he's going to be there for quite a while.
He's always one of those guys when you come on screen and you saw him, you're like, man, this guy looks like he could really do something. He had a good look, and he was pretty talented in the ring, but he was missing something, and it was obvious back here. And again, I'm not knocking the guy, but when you just looked at him on the surface, like a lot of these guys in the 80s, you think, oh man, okay, this guy's probably going to be something. And then it's like, no, not really. But, Jerry Oski from Hartford, Connecticut doesn't scream Memphis babyface. Like, you think it'd be the other way around. You think he'd have been Jerry Allen in Memphis and been Jerry Oski in the WWF, and maybe lie to us and tell us he's from somewhere besides Connecticut. You know how Southern fans are. They're not going to cling to somebody.
Well, he tries to cover that here when he's got a promo coming up, and I get a kick out of that too. We'll get to that in a minute. He's got a match here with Big Bill Rose. First off, though, guys, lots of solid, good mat wrestling by Jerry. He looked pretty good here. Grounded head scissors, chinlock O'Doom. Bill Rose going to try and trade punches with Oski, but he loses that battle too before he's shot off the ropes for an Oski power slam. Jerry going to get the win in just 3 minutes and 27 seconds. And then we go off to an interview. Lance Russell conducting an interview with Jerry Oski here. A very super winded Jerry. Okay. Blown up Jerry Allen tries to cut a promo here. I mean, this guy cannot breathe. He sounds like JYD cutting a promo in 1988. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the dude was doing chin locks and head scissors. He did like one wrestling move, and I mean, he's super winded.
You see enough of these promos over the year in Memphis, you start to think, why did we keep scheduling these promos immediately following their matches? A lot of why don't we have a guy wrestle, bring somebody else out for a promo? Then we let Jerry Oski catch his breath. He comes out after the next segment and talks. Because so many promos over the year, they're just sucking all the oxygen out of the room. And I don't blame them. I'd be the same way. But man, it makes some of these promos tough to get through for them and the viewer as well.
Yeah, it's so noticeable here that even Lance Russell on camera has to apologize for not allowing Allen the time to catch his breath. So Oski, though, he's going to blame it on the excitement for being here in Memphis. I wrote here in my notes, though, but seriously, man, you did one move. Can we say cardio?
Hey, them muscles, it's hard to carry them around.
Under the bright lights of the Memphis studio. Apparently,
right.
Jerry said he originally had ambitions of being a Major League Baseball player. Savage had to love that one. I guess Jerry got the calling for wrestling instead. I wrote, i.e., he couldn't make it in the majors. Allen, a Northeastern boy, we talked about it, Hartford, but he says, my mom's from Chattanooga, so he has roots here in Tennessee. And in open contracts, apparently, as he calls to bring on all comers. But I love how, I'm from the Northeast, but my mom's from Chattanooga.
Please like me.
That's exactly what that screams.
I'm not totally a Yankee.
I'm not a bad guy. Give me a shot, guys.
Yeah, that's why I brought that up, because I thought that was really, because like when they first announced him and I heard the name and everything, I was like, oh man, I don't know if they're going to take to him. He's a Yankee. And then when he got in the promo, like, well, mom's from Chattanooga. I was like,
well, this is Memphis. We're on the other end, Jerry.
We don't even like people from Chattanooga, much less. But I've always found it odd in wrestling, and the announcers do it, and the wrestlers certainly do it, that kind of makes wrestling look bad at how many people come into the business and we point out that they're only here because they couldn't get into or cut it in another sport,
right,
or they were too injured to, like, all these football players that would come in, they'd be like, yeah, they injured their knee, they can't play competitive football anymore, but they can come do this silly wrestling that we're supposed to think's more dangerous than anything. I'm always like, maybe we leave that out. It's like, it kind of downplays wrestling, but I don't know. What's your take on that? Am I overthinking it?
No, I mean, I totally agree. In fact, for all the faults that people give Gorilla, and I grew up with Gorilla Monsoon, so he was like my comfort noise in the background. Like I could go to sleep listening to Gorilla. But growing up on Gorilla, he was the one guy that would actually say, well, they got thrown out. They were too violent for the sport, whether, it was, they got cut really in reality or whatever.
Right.
But like a Jim Neidhart, well, he was too violent for the sport. They couldn't keep him in the NFL. And so at least Gorilla would like cover it. But most, like you said, a lot of the time it's like, well, I tore out my knee. It's no good anymore. So I'm going to come wrestle instead of, playing football.
Yeah. Even as a kid, I would think that it'd be like, okay, so I guess wrestling's easier than football then.
Right.
But anywho.
Well, they are back. We saw a VTR, a promo from Florida, Gordon Soley talking to the PYT, but they have apparently made the drive back to Memphis this week. In the studio, Tuxedo Newman's tag team, the Pretty Young Things, Coco Ware and the Thang, Norvell Austin, taking on, this is a fun duo, David Haskins and Billy Travis. For some reason, I was just fantasy booking as I was watching this match, but I wrote, in his prime years as a gimmick, how cool would it have been for a Coco Ware Billy Travis tag team?
Oh, definitely. And this tag match in itself, a few years down the road, would have took on a completely different look.
Right.
With babyface Haskins and, Billy Travis with more seasoning. But yeah, especially Coco and Billy as a team. That definitely would be fun.
Yeah, Billy could have been strumming the guitar and Coco could have been singing for us all. It would have been a fun time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That poor parrot would have been scared to death.
High energy.
As this match gets going, Lance Russell equips the PYTs are some kind of battlers. As Tuxedo Newman going to join commentary. Coco Beware in the ring, drop-kicking Haskins face off. He's been known to do that. PYT's going to dominate the action here, working over Haskins' back. Norvell Austin in with an Anderson hammerlock body slam. Boy, where they've been wrestling. And that's got to be next level wrestling here for Memphis. The fans are going to be going, he did what?
You ain't supposed to do that. You hurt somebody.
Yeah,
man, you mentioned Tux coming on commentary. Like, some of the things he said on commentary, I was like, holy. And then later, when it comes back into play, I asked myself, like, okay, so was he fed that? Was that intentional? Because if it wasn't, he would get canceled in present day to say some of the things he said about his own guys on commentary in 85.
Yeah, and I do have some of the, a lot of the comments that he makes with Sweet Daddy Siki in my notes here, but I don't have any, I don't think, in the PYT match.
I mean, those types can run fast and I don't know.
Well.
If taken out of context, they could be bad. But
yeah, I'm not really sure.
It seemed like they served a purpose for later, so I think maybe he was doing that intentionally.
I certainly hope that was the idea behind it anyway.
Yeah. Because he couldn't be that dense to think that it was okay to say that even in 1985.
Right, especially being from the West Coast. He's not from the Deep South where you kind of don't think, absolutely. So this action continues on, though. Finally, Billy Travis going to get a hot tag. He tries a sunset flip on Coco, but Ware with a butt drop to counter that one. Then it's a nasty, nasty brain. Always, I see it every week in my grenade show right now. Even in like Coco, who's just a step above enhancement for the WWF, when he gets to hit that Ghostbuster, the Brainbuster here in 1985, he don't fuck around, man. It's like, yeah, I know I'm 5'0", so take this. I'll make it believable. Oh my God, I wrote like a lawn dart. He drops poor Travis on his head, and for those of you who don't know what a lawn dart is, Google it.
Good Lord. I mean, you talk about making me cringe watching that. And the crazy thing is even though I knew that Billy Travis went on to have quite the career after this, even watching something that many years ago, I'm like, oh my God, he's dead. Like, that's the end of his career. Because oh, that was ugly. Golly, it was ugly. You talking about coming down on his freaking head? That was bad. But I guess he shook it off.
Yeah, so it's Brainbuster, and if that wasn't enough, Norvell Austin going to tag in and hit a big splash
For good measure.
Yeah, for good measure, Jess. And
drop that thing on them.
The academic win here, anticlimactic it is, with a big splash anyway. The PYTs get the win 4 minutes and 27 seconds. So they are back in the territory and heels, and the Fabs being baby faces. I look forward. Hopefully we'll see those two teams get it on before too long.
And hopefully Troy Graham left his wheelchair behind when he left the promotion, and we can put Billy Travis in it.
He's going to need it for a while here.
For a few weeks. This is hard.
Whew. Well, it's that time of the show, guys, where Jerry the King Lawler comes out to speak. King, he doesn't want to live in the past, he says. What's done is done. Yes, he lost that Southern title to the Macho Man last week, and the fans can figure out that Tux Newman probably had something to do with that. King says there's no need to rehash the past by showing the footage. Easy for you to say, Jerry, when you know they're going to do it anyway. But trying to get himself over, I don't want to live in the past. As Lance Russell insists, let's show the fans how it all went down. I wrote, can you imagine if Lance just went with Jerry? All right, King, we won't show the footage. The face Jerry would be left with. Well, no, you're right, Lance. The fans deserve to see it.
No, good point. There's no sense.
I don't want to see that again.
Boy, I'd have been a kid at home having a fit, wanting to see what happened, and now we're skipping it because we didn't need to see it.
Well, we do get to see it thanks to Lance Russell. We go back to last Sunday, March the 17th, Mid-South Coliseum. VTR going to show us the last minute of the Jerry Lawler-Randy Savage Southern title match. Lawler going to drop that strap, hammering away on the Macho Man, going for a scoop slam, but as he picks Savage up, the Macho Man's feet knock down referee Jerry Calhoun. So as the King covers, there's no referee. Instead, Tux Newman dragging Savage to the ropes. And as Lawler gets up to go after Tux, it allows the Macho Man to clock the King with a foreign object and steal the win, and of course, the Southern title. Now, I can see why King wouldn't want this shown. It's not anything he hasn't done himself 20 times in the past, but it works against him this time around. The Macho Man, the new Southern champ.
Well, that pulling out a foreign object worked well for him in Memphis. So, a little ways down the line, he decides to go for it again, and it gets him another belt against Tito Santana about a year from now. So, go with what works, pal.
You want to talk about psychology. I don't want to go too off topic, but this is about Jerry Lawler. I once went to a WWF house show, random match, no reason on the card, but it was Lawler versus the British Bulldog. And the entire match, it's not as exciting as it sounds. It's Lawler pretending to have a foreign object for the duration of the match, repeatedly hitting the Bulldog in the throat with it, and then the referee would check, and he couldn't find the foreign object. Reason being, there was no foreign object. Lawler was pretending he had one, and the crowd bought into it. I was sitting front row, maybe second row there, so you could I said, he doesn't have anything. All you have to do is look. I mean, it's very obvious, and I just loved it. I love that he could work the crowd like, I don't even have a foreign object. They just think I do. And, Bulldog obviously selling it like he did, but there was never anything in his hand, and I always loved that story.
Oh, yeah, that's classic Memphis wrestling going on at a WWF show, and that's things that they hadn't seen, so it was brand new to them and something totally different, which made him stand out. And so he didn't have to go out there and kill himself and take a bunch of bumps. He could act like he had a foreign object and work over Bulldog. It's an easy night for the Bulldog and Hearn, and shoot, yeah, man.
You can imagine how many wrestlers through time, maybe even in that era to a degree, in the 90s, I mean, they were, do you have a chain? No. Do you have brass knucks? No. Do you have anything? No, I don't have anything. What am I going to do? Lawler's just like, I'll just pretend I have something. Fans will believe it.
Lawler's like, I don't need anything, and the ref's never going to find it if I don't actually have it. So, no accidents there.
Yeah, good stuff. Fun story. I don't think I've ever shared that on any of my shows before, so I just that popped in my head. I wanted to share that with everybody. But as the King's out here talking about his loss to the Macho Man, not wanting to live in the past, obviously looking forward to a rematch down the line, though, Tux Newman going to interrupt the interview, and he is visibly upset that the footage was shown. Remember, he did not want that. He was going to buy the studio. I thought it was a little too over the top here as far as, like, why does he care if we see that he should be gloating? Yeah, we cheated, and fuck you, Jerry. And but rather than gloat, he's angry, and thus he brings out his latest charge. Straight off a plane from Europe, how generic, it's Canadian legend, wrestling legend, Sweet Daddy Siki has arrived from Europe.
I don't need to add anything to that.
Well, maybe you'll add something to this. The first thing Tux says to Siki as he steps in, he refers to him as, "Come in here, my boy." I wrote, yikes.
Yeah. Like I said, boy, Tux was on a roll today as far as inappropriateness in his promo. And yeah, that's the first thing he says to Sweet Daddy Siki. So, I wonder how this is going to play out.
So Sweet Daddy arrives in a suit in TV5 Studios here at Bizarro World, pal. This is what I wrote to see Siki in Memphis. Really odd fit, but I guess we have to presume he's here to confront the king. And Lance Russell, he says, "I don't want any difficulties or problems out here." But to everyone's surprise, including Tux Newman, Siki offers a handshake to Jerry Lawler. And the apprehensive king finally extends his hand, and the two men shake. Siki says he recalls a time when he needed help in Canada, some sort of benefit shows or something, and he wired for the king to come up and be a part of it for 2 weeks. Lawler was such a good man, he stayed for a whole month and wouldn't accept any expense money on top of it.
Is he sure he's thinking of Lawler? Is he sure he hadn't confused him with somebody?
I think that was Gary Lawler that he's talking about.
Yeah, this doesn't sound quite right.
Might even be Steve Lawler, but I don't know that it's necessarily Jerry Lawler. So but he says, he needed help, and Jerry Lawler went from Memphis to Canada and stayed for an entire month, gave up all that Memphis money to work for free, apparently. And with that, Siki appreciates and respects the king, going so far as to wish him all the best in regaining the title from the Macho Man.
I wish somebody would have asked him what year this was supposed to be in, because I don't remember any time in Lawler's career he was ever gone from Memphis for a whole month.
When he had the broken leg, maybe? Was he working on one?
Maybe that's what it was. He toughed it out and went to Canada for the kids.
Could have been. So Tux Newman watching his man Siki shake the hand of his foe, Jerry Lawler. Tux clearly confused and upset. He goes rambling on, but tut, says, when's the last time you heard somebody say tut, Gene?
It's been a long time, probably since the last time I saw this promo.
I thought I was watching a 1950s movie. Tut, says Sweet Daddy. Siki makes it clear that he's not Tux's boy. In fact, he's not a boy, period. He's not a them or a they, and he won't be talked about like that.
He's certainly not a boy, Ray. This man is...
This
man appears to be a senior citizen, but we'll get to that later.
Yes, indeed. So tut, Tux Newman. I'm not a boy. I'm certainly not your boy. I'm not a them or they. He's worked hard not to be referred to as such things. And I find that amusing to a degree, as now people want to be called them or they.
Yeah, that's what that immediately popped in my head. I was like, well, things certainly have changed, Sweet Daddy.
Absolutely. Siki said he came here to wrestle Jerry Lawler, but not under these circumstances. Tux Newman then presents Sweet Daddy with his contract, reminding him Tux is his manager. So Siki has to do what he says. Well, Sweet Daddy going to take the paper, the contract, and rip it into pieces. I'm not under contract anymore, says Siki. I wrote, I don't think contracts work like that, Gene.
Oh, if only they did. Boy, there's some leases and loans that I would have.
There's absolutely no reason for a contract if you can just rip it up and go, tut. Not anymore.
Yep. That's a little known rule. If you can actually get your hand on that contract afterwards and rip it up,
Tux needs to get a hold of those Los Angeles attorneys, those Hollywood attorneys, and talk to them about this, because he storms out of the set humiliated here. As Jerry Lawler says, he's glad to see Siki is still the man he remembers from all those years ago. They never really reference when this was, but he's glad that Siki here stood up to Tux Newman. And then Sweet Daddy weirdly keeps saying here, I don't know if you caught this in the promo, I might be gone tomorrow. I don't know why he keeps saying that. I wrote, clearly he already got wind of the paydays and accommodations here in the CWA.
That could be it. Yeah, when he got to town and they said, yeah, you're going to be going to Jonesboro tonight. And what's the pay? Oh, we'll see how the house looks. And he's like, I might be gone tomorrow. I might not make it to Coliseum.
So anywho, guys, they talk about getting Siki in the ring here for his match on today's program, but he's in street clothes right now, and they want to give him time to go change. But Sweet Daddy, he don't need no time to change. He can do it just like this, and he can do it right now. As off goes the suit coat of Siki, and he goes straight to the ring. And it appears based on the guys in the ring, we were scheduled to see Tojo Yamamoto versus Mr. X. But Siki entering the ring, kindly asking Tojo to step aside. I wrote, why didn't he ask Mr. X?
Well, that was probably a good call. He's probably heard about some of those chops from Tojo, and I would have asked him to leave too if I was 65 years old and wrestling in my street clothes.
Well, this is not 2000 Raw, so matchmaker Eddie Marlin comes out and says Siki is his kind of guy, looking to just get in the ring and get it on. So Marlin going to allow the replacement to take place, and we're going to have that match right now. I wrote, I bet Tojo loved making the trip to the studio and getting in his gear for this segment.
I'm wondering if he was if he was called like, look, we need you to come to the studio Saturday. Bring your gear, but we don't need you to work. You're just going to get in there, and then you're going to step aside for Sweet Daddy Siki. Of course,
same
the pay is
pay?
going to be the same.
Yeah,
There's no pay.
No, there you go. Well, now you same thing I was thinking. Absolutely.
Tojo's like, okay, I'll step aside for no pay.
So out goes Tojo Yamamoto. In comes Sweet Daddy Siki in his street clothes, ripping his polo shirt off to take on the masked Mr. X. And Siki commences to beating down the masked man. Couple of hip throws, a big body slam, and a jumping headbutt. That's all it takes to give Siki the win. Match goes a whopping 32 seconds. And Sweet Daddy out to celebrate with the fans.
And they actually seem pretty excited to celebrate with Sweet Daddy Siki, even though this is his Memphis debut. And up until 3 minutes ago, we've been listening to Tux, plug him every week, so we thought he was going to be a heel. So, man, things certainly took a turn here, didn't they?
Well, sort of, but at the same time, this match goes 32 seconds, and in those 32 seconds, after a segment denouncing Tux for calling him boy, I don't know how well Sweet Daddy would have loved to have heard Jerry Lawler here on commentary referring to Siki as, well, he's one of the top black wrestlers anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't guess it was too easy to replay the shows and stuff back then, so I guess he didn't know what was said on commentary, and that's probably for the best. But
and the scary part is when Jerry said that, he thought he was saying something good.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's one of the nicer things I've heard him say about black wrestlers on TV or off
draw
TV
or draw.
Draw.
Yeah.
So I gotta admit here, Sweet Daddy Siki is one of these guys who I've only really read about in magazines. I've seen a lot of pictures of him in magazines. I really haven't hardly seen any footage. This 30-second match is probably the most footage I've seen of Sweet Daddy Siki, at any given time. So once Tux said he was coming in, I was pretty interested. I was like, all right, I've only read about this guy. I'd be interested to see him. And like I said, when he came on camera, I was like, holy cow, this must be the tail end of his career. He's got to be at least 60 or more.
Right.
And turns out, well, I'm sure you'll get there.
Well, we can get there right now. Yeah, I totally agree. The pictures are online, the video's online. I posted portions of this segment on social media. The entire episode obviously is on YouTube. You guys can go check it out. But I'm sitting here watching it, and I know he goes back to at least the 1950s. I remember seeing some old black and white footage of Siki teaming up and working the kangaroos and whatnot. So I thought for sure here, like you said, he's got to be around 60, right? No?
Right, every bit of it.
Okay, well, apparently Sweet Daddy Siki was 44 years old here. He is my age, and I couldn't believe it. I thought he looked more like 64 to me.
As I was sitting there watching that, my wife walked in the room like, how old do you think that guy is? And she's like, oh, he's at least 60. And I was like, I know, right? So I paused the show, and I pull out my phone, and I go and Google it. And I go, oh, my gosh. And she's like, what? I'm like, he is 3 years younger right there than I am as we sit here today, which would be 2 years younger than my wife because she's a year younger than me. She's like, there's no way that guy is 44. I was like, I swear to God, he is. And she's like, oh, my gosh, you talking about having a hard life. You always hear that thing about black don't crack, but that didn't apply to Sweet Daddy Siki, apparently, because...
No, he is definitely not the rule.
No.
He's the exception indeed. Oh, man. Yeah, but post-match, Siki going to rejoin Lawler. They continue their promo here as Sweet Daddy now has a couple of the Cub Scouts from the crowd standing alongside him here for this interview segment. Lawler joking that Siki can do even better in the wrestling ring with his tights on. Of course, wrestling in street clothes here, having a little laugh. And then I wrote LOL. I don't know if you caught this, Gene, but when the kids start screwing around, they're hamming it up for the camera. One of them walks off camera. Jerry Lawler grabs him. He doesn't pull him back. He jerks him back into the screen like, stand here, you little bitch. And
he was snatched back into frame.
Yeah. Yeah, the king had none of it. I don't think the kid was walking off to go create mischief. I just think he was walking away. He was done. And Lawler's like, no, we got to look good here. And he just grabs this kid, and just yanks him back into the camera angle.
Like there was a set number of kids that had to be in the frame for this shot. Like, no, we can't. You got to stay here.
Right.
It was, yeah, I caught that. It was funny. So, all right, I don't want to drag this out, but before we move past this,
okay.
We got to talk about this for a second. So, Tux Newman has been saying for 2 or 3 weeks now that he had Sweet Daddy Siki coming in. He was,
right.
Somebody that was getting mentioned frequently as part of his little stable here. Do you think this was always the plan? Like, at what point do we decide that he's going to come out on TV and immediately turn babyface before he's ever even established as a heel? Like, this is the weirdest way to bring somebody in that I've ever seen. And do you think it was just that once he got there, somebody was like, I don't think these people are going to hate him, or was it always the plan, or is this another, it's been mentioned on this show already a couple of times, new booker, things change. Is this perhaps something that wheels that were set in motion before the new booker took over and he turned it in a different direction?
I can't see somebody else booking Sweet Daddy Siki to the Memphis territory. I have to think that's a Ernesto move. I didn't really see him coming in as a heel to begin with, so I wasn't really sure of that, but I totally agree with you in the regards to super odd. I don't know that in the history of wrestling, somebody's got to point it out, but has there ever been anybody who walked onto the set and said, yeah, I'm not a heel anymore, I'm a good guy? That's basically what we get here. He turns face. It's got to be a new record, right? We've seen guys turn face on the first episode that they appear on, but not in the same, 2-minute window. And that's he basically walks out a babyface. Technically, really, he's not really coming out as a heel. So it's kind of odd. It's like, why did you sign a contract to be managed by this guy if you didn't like this guy to begin with? If you didn't know who you were dealing with, why did you sign the contract? Apparently because you can just rip it up, I guess. But honestly, going back to the actual question you have, I had not thought about it until now, but as you were asking it, the only theory I can come up with, and it's just a theory, is maybe there was no intention to turn Savage heel, and once they did that, they didn't need Siki in that role anymore, and now they could do whatever they wanted to with him.
I would love to think that's the case. In kayfabe theory, it could just be that Siki wanted somebody to pay for his plane ride from Europe because, airfare from Europe probably was expensive back then. And so once he flew in, then he turned on him. But no, in all seriousness, you would think if they're like, all right, well, we've been building this guy up as Tux's guy, so everybody's assuming he's a heel. He's immediately going to come out here and flip and be good. We need a really strong backstory as to why he likes Jerry Lawler. Could we have come up with a lamer, less believable backstory of why he's not going to fight Jerry Lawler on behalf of Tux Newman?
Yeah, I don't know. I would have bought more. Oh, you flew me from Europe, but you flew me coach. I'm done with you.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
So Siki says if the promoters will allow him to stay, he would love to stay here in Memphis, Tennessee. Siki, though, apparently hoping Eddie Marlin would tell him no. He gets a surprise there, but just another star of the times. We talked about he didn't age too well, didn't look too good there physically, but he looked okay in the ring for what he did. And anybody's style can work in Memphis. Well, maybe not Cyclops. We haven't gotten there yet, but most styles can work here in the Memphis territory. And Siki got a little bit over here with the fans, no doubt about it. Unfortunately, now he'll stick around for a week or two, guys, but he's not going to be here too long.
Oh, man, so we can't get attached. Now I just hope Cyclops doesn't show up and immediately turn babyface, because that'll be awkward.
Yeah, Cyclops. Oh, man, that is another weird one, because everybody that Tux named like a month, talk about advanced booking plans. Like, he name-dropped everybody he managed a month before they even, show up.
Yeah, for Memphis, that's pretty unheard of. Usually it's like, hey, this guy's coming in next week. Go out there and mention him at the tail end of the show, and he's dropping these names weeks ago. And to be honest, you know, when he said that name, they probably had no clue he was going to be Cyclops when it come time. It was probably a Black Scorpion deal where Lawler's just like, well, tell him you're bringing in Cyclops. And Tux like, who's that going to be? He's like, I don't know. We'll figure it out that Monday on the way to the show. Just go out there and say it.
Yeah, right now it's Ernesto using some of the local Memphis talent that we've come to know and love, but also bringing in some of the old timers, if you want to call them that at this point. It's going to be Cyclops. Again, we'll discuss that when we get there, but also we see him giving Siki, throwing him a bone. I have to believe this is Ernesto trying to give Siki some work here. And then obviously you're going to bring in his sons as well as Ernesto, and one of them is already here and another one on the way. And we'll talk about that as we continue on. But right now we continue on. We get a 32-second squash from Siki, but that's followed by the Southern Heavyweight Champion, the Macho Man Randy Savage, taking on David Johnson. And I know that because he has David written across his ass.
Yes, that is very helpful. You always know when when David's in the ring.
There's a lot of Johnsons out there. I just want to make sure everybody knows that I'm David.
That's right. And apparently David Johnson has done something. Perhaps he had looked at Elizabeth at some point, and Macho got wind of it. I don't know what he did to Randy Savage, but holy, this was the roughest Macho Man beatdown of a match that I've seen him do.
Talk about getting yourself over as champion here, as David immediately tossed outside in the first move of the match. Savage up to the top rope for that flying double axe handle out to the floor. Back inside, it's followed by that diving elbow off the middle rope. 1, 2, Savage pulling Johnson up and tossing him back outside to the floor for, you guessed it, another top rope double axe handle to the studio floor. And then dragging David by his ankles around the studio floor. I wrote, LOL. Haven't really seen that before. Just grabbing David Johnson by, I'm like, what is he doing? What's he going to do with him?
I was still in the middle of watching this match, and I remember grabbing my phone and texting you going, holy shit, Mike, because we've had fun with David. And I was like, holy, and I didn't even say Johnson, but you knew I was talking about it. I was like, holy shit, Macho Man Randy Savage is beating David to death. Like, what did he do?
Yeah, and dragging him around like that. Now his tights just read, "Da."
After his mom went through all that trouble to put his name on his tights for him, now it just says "duh."
So here's how the match plays out. Double axe handle on the floor, flying elbow drop, double axe handle on the floor, and a second flying elbow drop for the Macho Man. Going to end this match 1 minute and 26 seconds, but we're not done yet, guys. Post-match, back to the floor a third time goes David Johnson for a third flying double axe handle from the Macho Man, just beating Johnson like he owes him money. I wrote, if I didn't know better and that Johnson will continue to work Memphis through the rest of the 80s, I'd swear this is how you write someone off. But nope, it's just a Macho Man.
Just a Macho Man match. I don't know. I feel like perhaps from across the room, he overheard David saying, somebody's like, what's that stupid thing he's got his belt on? And Savage is like,
I saw you looking at Elizabeth. Lust in the eyes.
Poor guy.
Everybody thought Hulk Hogan was the first one to have the lust in the eyes. It was actually David Johnson here. He found out.
Hulk should have talked to David.
Yeah, he found out all the way back in 1985.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com, and to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Rasslin podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Rasslin. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Rasslin Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Rasslin Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron. I'm talking about that $5 all access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Rasslin, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. We also offer remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show, covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series, covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. And for those who like all of their podcasts in one nice, neat little pile, the WrestleCopia Patreon also offers a Patreon exclusive Spotify account. You can actually go over to your Spotify with your WrestleCopia Patreon credentials. Instead of listening or downloading directly from Patreon, you can go over to Spotify, listen to all the latest shows, including all of the early releases. And you get all of that and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. Man, we just get finished watching one of the awesome beatdowns of Memphis wrestling history, and that's followed by more Tux Newman. This guy just won't go away. He's back out with the Macho Man. As Tux says, the Tux Man, he beat the king. Not Randy Savage. He says Tux Man beat the king, and now Savage is the champion. Sounds like a rematch in place as we go off to run down the card for the Monday night Mid-South Coliseum show. They do announce on the card it's supposed to be Sweet Daddy Siki taking on Tracy Smothers, but they announce there may be a change in that match. I don't know why. More on that when we get there, but it is going to be Jerry Oski versus Mike Sharp to open up the night. Mixed tag team action. Fabulous Ones taking on Eddie Gilbert and Lanny Poffo. Dutch Mantel going one-on-one with Mr. Wrestling, Tommy Gilbert. And yep, there it is, confirmed. Rematch. Randy Savage defending the title against Jerry Lawler.
All right. Jerry Allen versus Iron Mike Sharp sounds like the opener at Maple Leaf Gardens in another year or two.
Yeah.
Here we got it in Memphis.
Those guys wrestled quite a bit, I'm sure, up there in New York. But it all started, again, just like David Johnson, Lust in the Eyes. It all starts back here in 1985 Memphis. As we go back to the ring, we saw him return last week. Dutch Mantel back out here to take on the Destroyer. As we see some of the basics out here from the Dutchman, ending with a body slam and a running elbow drop. Doesn't get more basic than that. Mantel going over in just 1 minute and 21 seconds. As I I noticed Lance Russell was MIA for that segment on commentary. Must have needed a smoke break after all that Tuxedo Newman shit.
I bet. He's like, take this one, Davey. I'll be back.
Yeah, you handle this one, Davey. I need a camel.
Nobody's getting paid by the hour for these matches today, are they? They're all short and sweet.
Anybody got a lucky strike? Oh, man. Whew. Quick match, basic match by Dutch Mantel. Going to cut a promo here afterwards. He claims that Tux Newman tried to acquire him over the last week after Dutch Mantel put out Mike Sharp at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Oh, okay.
So this week, Dutch has Mr. Wrestling at the Coliseum. Mantel says he's going to get a win there, too. Dutch, he heard Lance out here last week calling his bullwhip Bessie. But Dutch wants everybody to know he wants to set the record straight. His bullwhip's name is Shoe Baby now. Well, I'm glad we got that situated.
And it came off like that had just been up his ass sideways all week long. Like,
and it's so funny when you know Dutch doesn't give a shit about anything, and he's like, whatever. And for some reason, somebody told him somewhere that when he was wrestling last week, Lance called his bullwhip Bessie, and he had to come out here a week later and correct him.
He's like, what the hell? I got to go out there and that's Shoe Baby. Lance, what are you doing?
Call my woman the wrong name. Oh, what kind of silly name is Bessie? It's Shoe Baby, damn it. Did we ever figure out how that name came about? Has Dutch ever elaborated on that? I'm sure he has somewhere.
Surely he has. I mean, I've read 2 or 3 books of his, but I can't remember it being in there. But it's had to have came up. He's done 10,000 podcasts,
right,
shoot interviews, and books. It's had to have been answered at some point, but I don't remember. I don't know. I'm gonna have to write into his latest podcast venture and see if he'll answer it.
Well, Dutch Mantel back in the Memphis territory for now, but up next on this program, what's this? Holy shit! Buckle down, Gene. You said if the Macho Man and the Fabulous Ones both appeared in the studio on the same week, that the space-time continuum would collapse. I'm paraphrasing there, but here we are. We saw Randy Savage, and now the Fabulous Ones are also in the studio.
Holy shit. It's like matter and antimatter all in the same place. This can't be really happening.
Batten down the hatches.
And Sweet Daddy Siki, too.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I forgot about it. Yeah. How could I forget about Sweet Daddy Siki in the midst of all of this? Stan Lane out here, he says they have open contracts to defend their titles, so you don't have to beg, guys. Just come on out and grab you some, because the Fabs, they're as easy as some of these girls.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he was having a good time this morning as then he responds, just kidding. No, you weren't, Stan. We know you weren't.
Don't worry, Stan. The line's not going to be any shorter outside of the old hotel room. You don't have to apologize.
That's what a babyface comment, though. Yeah, the Fabs are as easy as some of these girls out here.
Good Lord. You know, Steve's, as soon as they got through the curtain, Steve's like, what are you doing, jackass? You don't insult the rats.
Stan is on a roll here this week. He also tells everyone out, all the tag teams looking for a title shot, to sign your John Henrys, or in the case of the PYTs, sign your X, as in Malcolm X. I wrote double wow.
I think Stan wanted to not be allowed back in the studio. I think he was mad that they were there.
Oh, in my band? Shucks.
Don't worry, Steve. I got this. When this promo ends, they won't let us back in that damn studio.
I could actually buy that. Then we get to the Mike Sharp portion of the promo as Stan Lane talks about the upcoming, and I quote, no DQ, no time limit match against Eddie Gilbert and Lanny Poffo. I have question marks here. I don't know where I was when they added those stipulations. What is with all the confusion as of late with the match stipulations? And furthermore, what's with Stan always making shit up? First it was Tux Newman here for them, and now they have these gimmick matches at the Coliseum.
I don't know. I just hope when he came through the curtain that Mike Sharp's like, oh, happens to the best of us. It's okay.
No, okay.
Been there.
Oh, okay. Oh man, Iron Mike, I love it. Oh, I just this week on the Grenade Guys, Jake Roberts dumped Damien on top of Sharp, and all I could think was, how long was that shower?
Oh my god! Oh my gosh!
Oh man,
there wasn't enough soap in the world.
As we continue on with the program, we heard from the Fabs, and now they step in the ring to take on the Angel, Frank Morrell, here this week, and King Harley Hogg. The announcers, actually, initially they referred to him as J.R. Hogg, but they quickly realized he's the fatter of the two, and it is indeed Harley.
Not that anyone else on Earth would have known or cared, but
somehow either Lance is really good at making shit up, or he can tell the difference between the Battens as well.
I call bullshit on that, but maybe, I don't know. It's Lance. Maybe there's a tell there somewhere that we just don't know.
Oh, he's got that green marker streak down the back of his calf. You can tell the difference. That's Mark Batten. But right now we get the Fabs in the ring, and they are in control right away of Harley Hogg. Double backdrop. Is Stan Lane going to try for a body slam? And it gets really awkward here. Hogg, he's not cooperating, and I don't think he's being a dick or anything. He just drops to the mat. So then Lane going to try for a schoolboy, but Hogg also no-selling a schoolboy, just walking through it and tagging out. It made me wonder, was he hurt? As Hogg rolls out to the floor, never to be seen again until after the matchup. So Frank Morrell tagging in here as the Fabs continue with quick tags. Stan Lane shooting Angel off the ropes, and he runs right into a Steve Keirn forearm O'Doom. And if you guys have ever seen Keirn throw a forearm, it's a believable finish. And the Fabs get the win here in just 2 minutes and 22 seconds. Immediately, Hogg gonna reappear, pop up from ringside, seemingly okay. He walked off fine. I wrote very weird. Maybe he shat himself.
It's the only possible explanation that I could come up with, because, yeah, I mean, you'd assume he had to be hurt the way that all went down, but then for him to just pop back up fine afterwards, it seems likely. But I'm glad you pointed that out, because, like, for people who haven't seen Steve Keirn apply that forearm, if you just go and then he ended it with a forearm, they'd be like, well, that's lame. Like, no, go watch him. Go watch him throw that forearm, and then you'll understand that, yes, I wouldn't get back up. I would be down for the count.
I've seen a lot of those forearms in my life. I've seen a lot of people throw forearms in my life. Steve Keirn's probably the best, but at the same time, there was a match when I started doing Regional Rasslin Georgia with Jamie Ward. I think it was January of 1981. There's a matchup between Kevin Sullivan and Keirn where Sullivan is jumping off the middle rope and Steve Keirn's leaping into the air, and they meet in midair, and Keirn just knocks the living fuck out of. I mean, that was the most believable knockout finish, and I mean, he pinned him with it too, thank God, because he kicked out of that. I don't even know, but yeah, I mean, that was just the nastiest forearm shot I'd ever seen in my entire life.
Wow, I got to go back and find that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was VTR from the Omni, so yeah, it's got to be out there. I remember watching it, so I'm sure it's somewhere out there. So I encourage everybody to go check that stuff out. It's really good stuff between Keirn. That was when Sullivan turned heel. We go back here to Memphis 85, though, guys. We've seen Siki, we've seen the Macho Man, now we've seen the Fabs. Not too long ago, it was General Eddie Gilbert. Now it's just hot stuff. And he's out here with Lanny Poffo, of all people, for an interview. Lanny rocking a 2 sizes too small, silvery, glittery tank top. That's all I really got about that. No reference to Eddie's army or Gilbert being a leader anymore, as if it never happened, Gene. Eddie does refer to his team as unstoppable, however.
Wow. I mean, here Eddie's been stripped of his stripes. He's been demoted back to just being hot stuff Eddie Gilbert. But what a partner, Leaping Lanny, like you said. I'm glad you pointed that out. That silver tank top is quite the look for anybody.
Just a few weeks ago, he had people just chomping at the bit to join his army, and now all he can find for a partner is Lanny Poffo.
Well, you know, you hang out with Lanny, you end up in those
gangbangs.
Exactly.
Every time we try to wrestle, either single or tag team, it ends up in a gangbang.
Oh, well, much like the Fabs match, we hear from the tag team, and then we see them in the ring. They are the challengers this Monday night for the tag team titles. Eddie Gilbert and Lanny Poffo here, taking on Speedy Tall Tree and Jesse Owens, not the Olympian. Leaping Lanny going to counter a head scissors in a, we'll call it a unique way. Go check it out, guys. Tall Tree, though, holding his own, blasting both heels with drop kicks to clear the ring. Finally, he tags out to Owens as the heels take over, beat down on Owens to the floor. Speedy comes in flying over the top rope, plancha to the floor, down onto Eddie Gilbert and Lanny Poffo. You just didn't see that in those days. Over the top rope plancha by Speedy Tall Tree, who the heels, they basically no-sell it here. I can hear it now. I see how this all happened, just transpired backstage. Tom Ernesto, let my boy hit his move. The heels? Okay. Now, they never said they'd sell it or even bump for it, so here comes Speedy Tall Tree, running across the ring, flying over the top rope. We don't see this every week. Back in 1985, guys, lands on the heels, and they just kind of part ways. They just kind of, oh, okay, he touched us. And they just go about beating down on poor Jesse Owens as Speedy's left to just lay outside looking like an idiot.
I see that going one of two ways. Either it went exactly as you described it, or he didn't let them know he was going to do it, and they look up, and here comes this fool just flying through there, and they're like, what the hell is he? And he hits like, okay.
Well, that happened.
That was dumb, and then they just go finish up on Owens in the ring. But, you don't expect to see a plancha in 1985, least of all from Speedy Tall Tree.
Well, it doesn't end there. More flippity-doo moves as back of the ring Jesse Owens laid out. Lanny Poffo coming off the middle rope with a somersault senton. The honor roll. Going to give Lanny the win. 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Say goodnight, Jesse.
Yeah, this match was certainly ahead of its time. You see a plancha and a early version of the honor roll from good old Lanny.
So we've heard from quite a few of the talents here this week. It looks like they brought in all hands on deck because we got the Fabs, we got the Macho Man. Now we get the exotic Adrian Street, another guy who's not here every week. Of course, he has with him his valet, the lovely Miss Linda. Mixed tag team match upcoming Monday night as they have Speedy Tall Tree and his girlfriend, Debbie Combs, at the Coliseum. Then we go back in time to the VTR from last Sunday, the match that was supposed to have no referee. We see a referee right there on the floor as Debbie Combs takes on Miss Linda, and it doesn't appear to be any excess of fans have joined in to watch this, but we do see Miss Linda choking Debbie with the chain during that matchup, and with no referee in the ring, he can't check it. So she gets away with it. And Combs going to battle back, and then Adrian Street joining in to attack Debbie, as both heels then, Miss Linda and Street, beating down Debbie Combs until Dutch Mantell makes the save. I wrote, you mean to tell me that Speedy Tall Tree, the boyfriend, it had to be Dutch?
You know, in my head, I picture Combs and some other just random wrestler watching the monitor in that previous match, and when Speedy Tall Tree eats shit out on the floor like, that's your boyfriend, huh? Shut up. And then I assume when this was being laid out, they're like, all right, look, nobody's going to believe that Speedy is going to make the save.
Make the save, right? At the end of the night, too, right?
We have a real man we can send out there. And they're like, we can send Dutch. Like, all right, yeah, Dutch, will you do that? And they're like, yeah, sure.
So we see the interference from Adrian Street. We see him stomping down a lady. And as we cut back to the studio, we hear from Adrian, the exotic one, referring to that it's merely trick photography. Gotta love that dismissal. Great heel dismissal there. Oh, that was trick photography.
Yes, exactly. Adrian knows all about trick photography. It's not readily available in Memphis, but somehow they pulled it off on him. I'm excited to see that we're back to normal. I think we shied away from it last week, but now we're back to what we're used to. Yep. The expiration of time twins, Brad and Mark, are back in their normal spot as God intended.
Somebody please use that name when you're fantasy booking the Batten twins. Yes, the expiration of time twins. I love it. Brad and Mark Batten back in the main event. The standby match is what it really is here at the end of the program. They are taking on Mr. Wrestling, Tommy Gilbert under that mask, and Adrian Street. And at this point, I wrote these Mr. Wrestling masks are just, we'll call them Memphis-y. They just they don't even fit his face. They just kind of hang there like a bag with a hole cut out.
I'm assuming most of these were like made in the car on the way to the studio or something, like just with whatever spare material they could find. Because man, they are some of the most poorly made masks.
They might be the worst I've ever seen outside of the original blue blazer mask on some of those house shows. Looked like he had a blue sock on his face. That's another story. But no, yeah, I totally agree with you. Clearly, Mr. Wrestling 2's wife was not making these masks for Tommy Gilbert.
No. Speedy Tall Tree might have been sewing these on his way there. Well,
per the usual, like you said, outside of last week, the Battens are back in the standby match in the program, but also per the usual, it's a total beatdown from the heels on one of the Battens, Brad, I do believe, according to Lance anyway. Mark Batten finally tagging in, managing a drop kick on Mr. Wrestling, but then the heels take right back over. Adrian Street on top. The heels just hammering away on Batten, fully aware that time is running out. Nothing fancy, nothing special, no hurry, no attempt to cover the man. Just a random suplex, and we're out of time. Match goes 6 minutes and 14 seconds of nothing.
Yeah, usually, regardless of, even though the premise of the match is it's just expiration of time or whatever, but normally in any situation in wrestling, when we're going to a time limit draw and the time's going to expire, we start picking up the pace. We start getting some excitement in the end. No, these expiration of time matches usually just end abruptly out of nowhere with just no heat, no nothing. It's just like ding, ding, ding. Lance rings the bell, and well, that's over. Thank God.
No attempt to win the match. It's mind-boggling why these guys do that. But time expires, and Brad Batten gets to tag back in just as it does. But the heels, they don't want to give either Batten anything on the offense here, beating down both Battens, and then they just randomly walk away in the middle of it. This match ain't time limit draw. It doesn't get more dismissive than this. Like, fuck you guys. They're sitting there beating on them, and then they just walk away. It was weird.
That's enough of that. You hungry? Let's get some lunch.
Yeah, let's get out of here. As Adrian Street got that mixed tag coming up with Miss Linda taking on Speedy Tall Tree, who was not part of the save, and Debbie Combs at the upcoming Coliseum. I don't know if the Battens are on the card at all, but Adrian Street looked good anyway, and I think Mr. Wrestling has Dutch Mantel, so it would have been nice to give them a win here, but nobody ever seems to win in these standbys anymore anyway.
No, but if they do, you can bet your ass it ain't the Battens.
Amen to that. As we come to the close of the show, Eddie Marlin wants to alert everyone that Sweet Daddy Siki will be at the Mid-South Coliseum. Well, I'm there, Gene. Sign me up. Absolutely.
Oh, thank God, yes. I was on the edge of my seat because, if Sweet Daddy Siki wasn't going to be there, I was just going to set this one out.
Yeah,
but
fuck that Lawler Savage return match. If Sweet Daddy Siki's on the card, I riot. Boy, howdy. Summon a gun.
I love the sense of urgency, though, of him, the way he come and deliver that. just like, let everybody know before we go off the air and before anybody leaves the studio.
News alert. We got a breaking news story here. Sweet Daddy Siki will be part of the Mid-South Coliseum card, and then Tux Newman going to interrupt as he says he's still Siki's manager, stating that Sweet Daddy will not wrestle. Eddie Marlin reminds Newman, you may be his ringside manager, but I make the matches. Siki reappears as Newman wants Sweet Daddy to wrestle two of his men. Well, if you're going to wrestle, why don't you wrestle a couple of my guys? And Sweet Daddy says, I could beat four of your guys. But remember, Eddie Marlin's making the matches here, so wasn't really sure what was going on with all of that. As we run out of time, I wrote, that was both confusing and convoluted, that conversation to end the show. Felt like Tux went into business for himself at the end there.
Yes, you nailed it. Confusing and convoluted. It's like, Siki, he doesn't even have four guys. Like, what are you talking about? Just shut up. Yeah, that whole segment is just like, if we'd have just ended it with Eddie Marlin saying, yeah, Sweet Daddy Siki will be there.
Right.
Just leave it at that. We didn't need all that, but we got it anyway.
Definitely confused me. And, this is like 2024, and I still had to scroll and see what the hell happens at the Coliseum after that. But you know what? I've been really disappointed with the lack of Phantom. I guess he's still trying to find his way out of that box.
We spent a whole show teasing what was in that box, and then we found out the Phantom was in that box, and we have not seen the Phantom on TV since. And the Eddie Gilbert's army has since disbanded. They're the ones that introduced him, and they have since gone away, and we still have not seen the Phantom on TV.
Free reign. You think Tux would acquire the services of the Phantom? I mean, he's a character straight out of Hollywood, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yes. There you go. Makes sense.
He probably somehow already has a contract on him. He already owns the name via Hollywood somehow.
Could be. Well, guys, we got some house shows this weekend. I don't have any results, but here on Saturday, March the 23rd, they head off to Jonesboro at the American Legion Arena. It's Lawler and Savage, the PYTs versus Constance and Ashley on that card. Also Saturday, March 23rd, in Bowling Green, Kentucky. No results for that show, but it's probably Pafo Mania, maybe some Lanny, some Angelo thrown in there.
We can only assume, and on that Jonesboro card, it caught my eye that, PYT, Constance, and Ashley. Ooh, can you imagine the brain buster that Coco would give.
Could you imagine one of them
if you give him half the chance?
Could you imagine them getting in the ring? I'm sure you've seen an angry Coco in the ring. Could you imagine Ware getting in the ring?
I have seen it live and in person. It's not pretty.
Yeah, I'm just envisioning one of these guys screwing up the match more than once, and Coco maybe giving a few liberties there.
Whew. And folks, if you don't know what we're referring to, go on YouTube. I don't. It's not on my channel. I don't know if it's on Ray's channel, but if you just put in Coco Ware versus Patriot, and just that's what we're referring to. Those types, and it's not a one-off. That's just the most famous.
That's definitely not. In fact, when I first brought it up here, I didn't even think of that. I'd totally forgotten about that. But yeah, that is an excellent, definitely a great description for what I was talking about. Go check that out.
Not Del Wilkes, by the way.
No, not Del Wilkes. Not that Patriot. Just a random Memphis jobber Patriot, and he found out. Let's just put it that way. Yes. Now, this week, I am missing the March 24th Jerry Lawler show, unfortunately, so I don't know what's coming to town this week as far as car shows and things, but we're
not here who's going to be at the Monster Truck show on Sunday.
Bigfoot versus Barefoot, Gravedigger, Carolina Crusher, and more. Sunday.
Whew. Plus a special appearance by the Playboy Playmate of the Year.
Yeah, along with Uncle Elmer by her side. As we don't have results for that. We don't know what was going on there at the Lawler show, but we do know the following day was the Mid-South Coliseum card, March the 25th, Monday night. And just as promised, in the opener, it's Jerry Oskey going to a draw with Iron Mike Shaw. How many times do you think those guys went to a draw in the opener for the WWF as well?
Oh, yeah, man. This was just perfect practice for what they'd be doing down the line for Mr. McMahon.
Hey, Mike, you want to do our old Memphis match?
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much. Lots of stalling. Now I know where Sharp got it from. His run here in Memphis is also on the card. We were talking about the mixed tag team action. Adrian Street and Miss Linda over at Speedy Tall Tree and Debbie Combs. Hopefully Speedy did the job there. Sweet Daddy Siki, originally slated to take on Tracy Smothers, but now that he's a babyface, apparently you can't work babyface job guys. So the match has changed to Siki over J.R. Hogg. And I have to wonder, was that Harley Hogg again? Because we're only going to see one Hogg here over the next few weeks. So we do know Sweet Daddy got a win, though.
Yeah, I figure no matter who was on the other side of the ring, the match was going to go exactly the same.
Right.
No matter what.
Which was probably the identical match that we saw on TV as well.
Yep. I would assume so, honestly.
Dutch Mantel out there with Shoe Baby scoring a win over Mr. Wrestling, Tommy Gilbert. PYT Express over the team of Constance and Ashley. And you have to wonder how long Constance and Ashley are going to stick around here. I think they're going to be here for a little while still, but it's kind of interesting because now we have the Fabs, we have the PYTs. Do we really need teams like this? The Terminators found out, and Constance and Ashley, hopefully they realize that they better up their game.
Yeah, you got to figure that they're going to be looking for the door sooner or later because no matter how hard Lance is trying to sell us on it, they're just not improving that much.
Well, that was just one of the tag team matches on the card. We also see the Southern Tag Team Champion Fabulous Ones over the team of Eddie Gilbert and Lanny Poffo. And in the main event, Jerry Lawler defeating that Southern Heavyweight Champion Randy Savage on a DQ.
Well, at least we only got one on this show. DQs seem to plague Memphis, but if it keeps the belt on Savage, I'm for it.
Looking at some of the winners here, Adrian Street, Sweet Daddy Siki, Dutch Mantel, the PYTs, the Fabs, Jerry the King Lawler, of course, with Randy Savage. Even though there's a lot to make fun of right now, when you look at least the guys that are going over, even though they're not working each other at the moment, there's enough talent that you can go, well, Memphis is doing a lot better than it was doing at the beginning of the year.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're trending in the right direction. There's just still some loose ends that need to be tied, and we got to figure this Tux Newman thing out. But we're headed in the right direction, it feels like, anyway.
We're moving away from the Joe Lightfoots and the Kevin Kellys, the featured Nailses of the world here. Tuesday, March the 22nd, doubleheader, one of the shows in Mumford, Tennessee. Tell me about the high school in Mumford, Gene.
You stumped me this time. Usually I've been to some of these places. There's one coming up here in a little bit I'm familiar with, but I have not been to Munford, Tennessee, believe it or not.
Okay, well, we got you this time. On that card, Adrian Street, Constance and Ashley Tojo, and a ladies match. And I thought that would have been Combs and Miss Linda, but they're actually working the other show Tuesday night at the Louisville Gardens on March the 26th. It's Jerry Oski again going to a draw with Mike Sharp. Sweet Daddy Siki over Tom Branch, who is the son of Tom Ernesto. So Ernesto's both of his boys now here in the Memphis territory. And speaking of his boys, it's Mr. Wrestling scoring a win over Speedy Tall Tree in a no disqualification match. I'd love to know what happened to draw a match here between Mr. Wrestling and Speedy Tall Tree, no DQ.
Yeah, I was wondering when you said it, like, why was that necessary? That's so random.
I'd have to go back to the last episode we did and read the results for the Garden to see if there was really more to this than that. I mean, this is what the results I got say anyway. No DQ, Mr. Wrestling over Speedy Tall Tree. So you look, back-to-back matches, the Booker, Tom Ernesto, both of his sons here now in the territory. But you have to think at some point he had a conversation before he brought him in with Jerry Jarrett. And clearly it was stated, you can bring your boys in, but they're not going over.
And they have not as of yet.
Also on the card at the Louisville Garden, it's the PYTs over the Battens. The Fabulous Ones defeating Adrian Street and Lanny Poffo this time around. Dutch Mantell going to a no contest with the Macho Man. And again, another no contest, Debbie Combs versus Miss Linda, which likely, with it closing the show, I have to imagine it ended very similar to what we saw in the Mid-South Coliseum.
Yeah, I was saying they just redid that whole thing again, it would seem.
Doubleheader Thursday night, guys, March 18th in Hayti, Missouri. Is that correct, Gene?
Yes. Now I'm familiar with Hayti, Missouri. I've got family in Kennett, and so I have been through Hayti quite a few times, believe it or not.
All right, so on that card, it's Constance and Ashley versus the PYTs. The Battens on the card against the Hogs, and Tojo Yamamoto also there. So you know that's the B show. On the A show, they head off to Nashville. We don't see this every week on a Thursday night. Usually it's like a Saturday show. So Nashville, they jump around a little bit.
Yeah, that it does. I thought that they were pretty set on Saturdays, but it seems to be moving around in this era.
So Thursday, March 28th, Nashville, Tennessee on the card. We don't have results, but we do have the matchups. Look at this. Speedy Tall Tree against Adrian Street. Tracy Smothers against Mike Sharp. It's Joe Stark, how random, taking on Lanny Poffo. Tom Branch going up against Sweet Daddy Siki. Wow, can you imagine Sweet Daddy here in Nashville? Thank God they didn't send him to Hayti, to the high school.
Yeah, no, good thing we sent him to Nashville. We don't have the results, but we can look at these matches, and I think we all know what most of these results were.
Right. Randy Savage taking on Jerry Oski. Dutch Mantell going one-on-one with Eddie Gilbert. And again, Miss Linda battling Debbie Combs in what they refer to here as a cat fight.
Honestly, Dutch and Gilbert's the only result that I could question and could go either way. Everything else is pretty set.
Right, and we close out the week, guys. Friday night, a pair of fundraisers, I guess you could say. March the 29th, and tell me if I'm pronouncing this right. Turrell, Arkansas, or is it Terrell, Arkansas?
Turrell, Arkansas is what Corey Macklin always said, so I'm assuming that's it. Turrell, Arkansas, and the next one, I have wrestled there many times, believe it or not.
On this card, Fab's going to headline this one. Also there, Constance and Ashley, Randy Savage, Lanny Poffo, and Joe Stark. Meanwhile, in Ecru, Mississippi, at the Pontotoc High School. Is that correct?
Yeah, you nailed it. Good job.
I try. On that card, Dutch Mantell, the Battens, Eddie Gilbert, Mike Sharp, Playboy Frazier coming back out, and Jerry Bryant in Ecru.
Heck yeah, you get over in Mississippi here in Playboy Frazier country. He's going to show up for that one.
I noticed on a lot of the house shows here in this week, Jerry Lawler's not listed.
He may be out doing charity shows in Canada somewhere on behalf of Sweet Daddy Siki.
Returning the favor. Might have
almost, earlier when we were talking about that, about him doing charity shows for kids, I almost said Jerry Lawler for the kids, but I thought, boy, that could just certainly be taken in ways, so I didn't say it. It's a good thing I didn't say it.
Yeah, we won't go there, at least not this week anyway. I'm sure there'll be plenty of ammunition in the later weeks to come, but another week in the books. Next time we join you guys, we're going to be finishing up the month of March. It's going to be a quarter of the way through 1985, and a lot has changed here in rapid fashion since Tom Ernesto has come to town as the booker. I don't know if that's all for good or not, but certainly business picking up as far as the talent goes in many respects anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I say maybe in the next episode, if we have time as we wrap the month up, maybe we'll spend a little time talking about who Tom Renesto was and a little bit about him for context.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to touch on that very briefly right now, not only was he a former legendary heel wrestler, but he had been booking for a long time. He at least goes back to Ann Gunkel in the Georgia territory, before she got shut down. So, and probably likely before that, I'd have to do a little digging to see when Tom first started booking, but he's been around the block and he knows what he's doing. And you may not believe that as you see some of the things going on here right now, but he's trying, guys. It's definitely something different than Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett going back and forth every single.
Yeah, I mean, I know younger people may not recognize that, and that's why I thought maybe, we'll spend a little time on that in the next show, because younger people may not recognize that name, but he's certainly not a stranger to booking, and he's got quite a history of it, and maybe by now he's just a little out of touch, or maybe he's just, not used to Memphis, but it definitely feels like he's struggling with the booking here in the early going, but as you pointed out, he's got some really good talent to work with, so maybe he's going to pull it together here pretty quick.
Well, and this is just another theory too, but we kind of pinpointed when Jerry Jarrett's booking ended and Jerry Lawler took over, which would have been right around the beginning of the new year, and we really talked, not just the blizzards causing a lot of trouble, but it just felt like Jerry was phoning a lot, Lawler, was phoning a lot of the booking in, more so than usual, and do you think this was maybe Jerry Jarrett saying, look, King, we got to do something different here? Or was this Jerry Lawler saying, you know what? Maybe he didn't want to fool with it. I don't really know, but it was not too often that they would bring an outside guy in to book for the territory.
No, not unless, it was Bill Dundee. He really wasn't an outside guy, but it was an outside of those two gentlemen. But still, Dundee was pretty much, in line with kind of the same type of booking that Lawler and Jarrett did. So this is, completely, like you say, an outside guy and a different style of booking and a completely different person. But I tend to think that maybe that's what it is, because Lawler not only seemed to be phoning the booking in, but, we've pointed out on here he seemed to be phoning in a lot of his performances,
yes,
as far as his promos and hyping matches, like the whole Jimmy Hart leaving town angle, and even his recent matches with Bockwinkel, where he really usually can really sell you on the idea of he was going to go in there and do everything he could to finally walk out the world champion. And I just didn't believe any of these promos this last go round. I didn't think there was any way in hell, despite the fact Mach Bockwinkel wasn't really the AWA champion anyway. We would have had no way of knowing that back in '85. But I wouldn't have believed that he really thought he was going to win, or that he really even wanted to win. So it was time for him to step out and let somebody else take the reins and see what they can do.
I'm not really sure, what's been going on with the King, whether it was Jimmy Hart leaving or the Nick Bockwinkel matches, like you said, but we've talked about that in the past. Not a lot of believable delivery here in his promos on TV. Now, the matches we've seen, the clips that we've seen, and some of them, 8-9 minutes of matches with Eddie Gilbert, Nick Bockwinkel, things like that. I'm not saying the King didn't go out and deliver like he normally did at the Coliseum, but you're right. As far as selling tickets here on TV, I just haven't bought into anything until last week's promo with Randy Savage.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And like I say, I crack jokes every now and then and take little shots here and there, but I'm a huge Jerry Lawler fan, have been my whole life. I've got a whole section of Jerry Lawler memorabilia over here. But at 85, what we've seen up to now until Randy Savage turned heel has not been a stellar year for Lawler. And so I'm excited to see if maybe he can get his mojo back, and this Savage feud might just be exactly what he needs to get it back going again.
Yeah, well, we're going to kick things into high gear here for the next couple months with Randy Savage on top, so stay tuned for that. Obviously, the Macho Man eventually going to go off to the World Wrestling Federation, but he's here right now, and we're going to enjoy it while we can, while it lasts, Gene, and looking forward to covering more of that next time around. Now, I only skimmed the next episode. I don't know a whole lot as far as the storylines and whatnot. I don't like to go too far ahead. I did notice Sweet Daddy Siki is back for a second week, so spoiler alert there, guys. We know Siki will be in studio and in wrestling gear, if you want to call it that, next week. But outside of that, I don't have a whole lot as to what to expect.
Right, folks. Ray is doing his best Eddie Marlin here at the end of the show to let you know Sweet Daddy Siki is booked for next week. So make sure you make sure you show up for the next Memphis episode of Regional Rasslin because you're going to get your sweet Daddy Siki fix. And I love how you work that in, just like Eddie Marlin. Good job.
Yeah, I try. And,
you know where the money is.
The pay window, baby. Exactly. All right. So, well, guys, that's going to wrap it up here this week. Gene, if you got anything you want to address here at the end of the program, I always open the forum.
I'm like you. I really didn't get a chance to skim over the next episode. So when I sit down, it's going to be completely new and fresh to me. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the next chapter of the Lawler and Savage feud is, and see what we do with the PYTs. We've had fun with that name. We've had fun with the thought of Norvell being pretty or young, and you've established he's the Thing. But they are a really good tag team. And,
they really are.
And compared to some of the other heel teams we've had in here recently, I liked the interns. I liked Troy Graham, but you got Coco and Norvell are completely different style, bring completely different things to the table from the interns. So they have a lot of potential of being fun. I look forward to, surely at some point they've got to tie up with the Fabulous Ones, and that should make for some good stuff.
To give everybody an idea of, if you can look back past the red leather jackets, the Michael Jackson 80s look of the PYTs, I'll put it, one of the listeners said to me on Facebook, and obviously wrestling matches are subjective, but he said, everybody puts over the Fantastics and Midnight Express matches, but he said his favorite Fantastics match was against the PYTs in Dallas. And, I don't know what match he's referencing. I'm going to have to go actually find it, and I don't know how good it really was, but that just shows you that, these guys, they may have been a gimmick, but, when they got in the ring, they knew how to work. And for anybody who saw anything Coco did prior to coming to the WWF and carrying a bird around, I mean, the guy was just amazing in the ring. Even early on in the WWF, he truly was, as I got to cover that in '87. But, as time went on, he put on a little weight, but he also, just got into the gimmick and did what he was, paid to do. But Coco, man, he was next level. And had he been a little taller, he would have been a whole lot more. I hate to say that, but that's just the way it is.
No, it's just that was just the times then, and I totally agree with you. Coco is a lot better than his legacy is going to remember him, and it's just a matter of, like you said, he didn't have the height to go and get pushed in the WWF, and those guys even like Junkyard Dog, so many different guys who had all this potential, and when they got to WWF, they got pigeonholed into their spot on the card. They're out there traveling the roads every night. And, it gets to the point where there's no need to aspire to more. You're in your position. You're not going to get above that position. So you just get comfortable, and that's what you become. And there's nothing wrong with it. They made a good living. But, man, Coco was, in my opinion, I agree with what you said. Coco had potential to do so much more. But he was the Birdman in the WWF, and he made it in the Hall of Fame. So,
no, true that. And,
there you go.
Not necessarily a spoiler, but a little teaser coming up here. I know we got something coming here the next couple weeks that we're going to be telling on the Memphis program here in '85. And I won't even divulge who it involves. I'll just say that there's something fun coming up, and I'm looking forward to talking about. You know what? I will spoil it a little bit. Something fun coming up between Eddie Gilbert and Dutch Mantell, and I'm looking forward to getting into that because it's kind of interesting. I thought it was anyway, but that's all I'm going to say right now, guys. Just stay tuned over the next couple episodes, Gene, and we'll elaborate on it when we get there.
I'm looking forward to it because everybody knows I'm a big fan of Eddie Gilbert, and I'm certainly a big fan of Dutch Mantell. So you get those two together, it's definitely going to be good.
Well, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Regional Rasslin. I hope you guys are enjoying the Memphis 85, as well as Georgia and the UWF with Jamie Ward and Roman Gomez. But obviously, Gene, you got the Retro Wrestling Review. We talked about it at the top of the show. USWA 93. I think you're in March also there right now. So kind of timely. And you got a lot going on.
We're almost caught up.
Yeah, the WWF crossover stuff is gold. I'm looking forward to heel Vince McMahon when you get to that point. But the Macho Man was recently in the studio, so talk about a flashback, right? We're doing him here in 85. This is when he's leaving, and you got him returning 8 years later there. And then, of course, you just debuted the brand new podcast at WrestleCopia talking about Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert, the brother of Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, the son of Mr. Wrestling Tommy Gilbert. So again, it all ties into here in this program in 85 in certain ways.
It really does. And man, Doug is really fired up about doing this podcast. He's excited to be sharing stories of his career and Eddie's career and his father, Tommy. Yeah, he's told me, he's like, we can talk about anything you want. you lay it out each week, and I'll be on there and I'll answer as open and honestly as I can. And so far, that's certainly been the case, and I'm having fun with it. I hope if people haven't checked it out, I hope they do check it out. I think you'll enjoy it, and even if you aren't necessarily familiar with Doug's career, like I say, there's a lot of stuff about Eddie, and the stories are interesting. So I wish everybody would check it out and let us know what you think. And same with my Retro Wrestling Review, the USWA podcast. Getting a lot of great feedback on it. People seem to be enjoying it, but please, if you watch it, let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you'd like to see anything different or anything we could do better or less or more or anything. I'm always happy to listen to any input anybody's got.
Yeah, it's just really good stuff across the board going on right now at WrestleCopia. Of course, we're in the summer of '88 on the Wrestling Memory Grenade and the World Wrestling Federation, heading towards WrestleFest '88, and me and Gene going to do a WrestleFest VIP video cast coming very soon over to patreon.com/WrestleCopia. You guys better sign up now. Spots are limited to join, as not only will we be doing WrestleFest, but me and Dan Ginnity of the Pro Wrestling Academy, we've got some really great Japanese VIP video cast coming very soon. You guys stay tuned. We're going to be announcing some of the shows and matches we're going to be covering there. And me and Gene, I'm sure we're going to do some other things as well. I know he's got some fun Memphis stuff he wants to do with me, with the Moondogs, Jerry the King Lawler. So you never know what's going to pop up, and we're going to have some fun.
Let me tell you, I am super excited about doing this WrestleFest video cast with you. And folks, if you're not familiar with WrestleFest, and even if you are, like in the past, like when I was younger, to see the entire WrestleFest event, you had to Frankenstein this thing together. You had to see the VHS release, but that wasn't all the matches. Some of the matches were on other Coliseum video releases. Right. Some weren't on Coliseum video. Some had been shown on primetime.
Right.
You ain't got to do all that. Ray has done all the work for you. He has taken and pieced together everything from WrestleFest in one convenient location, and all you got to do is sign up for the Patreon VIP, and you'll be able to see the whole thing, and you'll be able to hear me and Ray watch it, talk about it, and I'm super excited about it. I'm a big fan of that show. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And the first appearances of Curt Hennig and Terry Taylor wrestling each other pre-gimmicks, pre-Mr. Perfect, pre-Red Rooster. We're going to see Curt Hennig and Terry Taylor get it on in the middle of that, and that was not released until many, many years later in the 2000s. That was the one missing gem of it all, and that's out there. That's on the show as well. All 15 matches on the card. We're going to cover it from beginning to end, bell to bell. Looking forward to it, and I have so much more context to the Rougeau's Killer Bees feud. So what used to be, as a kid, a throwaway match that kicked off the show, I'm looking forward to that. So just from beginning to end, I'm looking forward to covering that whole thing. Andre and Hogan in the cage, Savage and DiBiase for the belt, Bulldogs and Demolition. That's just always been so fun to me to see those two teams in the ring together. So yeah, we got a lot to go through. Jake and Rude, I mean, just so much. So it's going to be a fun time. Looking forward to that coming very soon. Check it out on Patreon, guys. And again, like I said, Japanese video casts and so much more right around the corner there. And for those interested, Bob Roop, recent episodes we just did, he paid homage to Kevin Sullivan, the late great Kevin Sullivan. And we talking about Bob's career right now, his big run as a main eventer in the Florida territory, coming up on that big Steve Keirn feud, and Steve Keirn's Shell Shock Daddy.
Once again, somehow it all ties together. And in the WrestleCopia world, all these things intersect at some point. That's really fun to me.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Gene, it's I guess we talked their ear off long enough. I appreciate it's been a while. It's good to get another show out, and I hope everybody got their money's worth, seeing though this is free. And we'll be back soon with more Memphis goodness from 1985.
Absolutely. Looking forward to doing it again. Thanks, folks.
All right, guys, that'll do it here this week, but we shall return for more Georgia 81, Memphis 85, and UWF 86 very soon. I'm your host, Ray Russell. You can follow me on X at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Rasslin Grenade. And don't forget that $5 all access tier over at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. And until next time, we'll be back soon with more Regional Rasslin, where we talk the territories.